The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the quiet streets of the neighborhood. A young girl was walking home from school, carrying her worn-out backpack and a few books. She had always been a quiet child, someone who preferred to keep to herself, observing the world around her rather than being part of it. Her footsteps were light on the pavement, almost as if she didn't want to disturb the calm that seemed to surround the area. She was used to these streets. She knew where the cracks in the sidewalk were, which neighbors kept their doors open and which corners felt safe. But today something felt off. As she approached a familiar corner, she noticed a car slowing down. At first, she didn't pay much attention. People drove past all the time, but something about the way the car moved made her pause. It was too slow, too deliberate. She glanced at the windows and saw two men inside. Their eyes seemed to be locked onto her, and a wave of unease ran through her. Her heart began to beat faster, a warning she couldn't ignore. She quickened her pace, hoping to put some distance between herself and the vehicle, but the car mirrored her movements, following her with steady persistence. Fear began to creep in, a sensation she wasn't used to. Her mind raced, thinking of the safest places to go. She passed by a small park where children usually played, but it was empty now. The swings swayed slightly in the breeze, almost mocking her hesitation. She glanced around, hoping to see a neighbor or a passerby who might notice her, but the streets were eerily quiet. Her usual confidence in navigating her path home was replaced by a cold, heavy uncertainty. She considered running, but the car's sudden movements whenever she shifted her pace made her realize that she needed a better plan. She ducked into a narrow alley between two houses, hoping it would provide a shortcut or at least some cover. Her backpack bumped against her shoulders as she moved, and she pressed herself against the wall, listening. The sound of the car approaching made her heart jump into her throat. She held her breath, hoping the men would not notice her. Every instinct screamed at her to stay hidden, to be silent, to be invisible. She had never felt so small and powerless. While hiding, memories of stories she had heard from older children and warnings from her parents flashed in her mind. She remembered her mother telling her to always be aware of her surroundings and to trust her instincts. She remembered her father reminding her that courage didn't mean not being afraid. It meant acting even when fear was present. Those lessons, once abstract, now felt very real. She clutched her books tighter, her knuckles turning white, and tried to steady her breathing. She knew she couldn't stay in the alley forever. The men were still looking for her, and every second that passed increased the danger. Just as panic began to take hold, she heard the roar of an engine that was different from the car that had been following her. A large black SUV turned the corner sharply, skidding slightly before coming to a controlled stop. From it emerged a man whose presence seemed to fill the space around him. He moved quickly, yet with purpose, his eyes scanning the situation with a calm authority that contrasted sharply with the girl's frantic state. She didn't recognize him at first, but something about his size, his confidence, and the way he carried himself made her feel an unexpected sense of safety. The man stepped between her and the approaching car, his posture commanding. The gunmen in the vehicle hesitated, clearly surprised by this sudden interference. They weren't expecting anyone to confront them, let alone someone so imposing. The girl, still pressed against the wall of the alley, watched in awe and relief as the man assessed the situation. He moved in a way that suggested he had faced danger before, and he wasn't about to back down now. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The sun cast long shadows over the street. The wind whispered through the empty branches of nearby trees, and the girl felt her pulse in her ears. She realized she was no longer alone. This man, a stranger yet a protector, had arrived at exactly the right time. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't shout or make demands. His presence alone was enough to create a boundary the gunman dared not cross. The girl's fear didn't vanish instantly. It lingered like a shadow, reminding her of the danger she had faced and the potential threat still present. But the sense of helplessness began to ebb, replaced by a cautious hope. She knew that she could rely on this man to guide her out of the immediate danger. She felt a tiny spark of courage within herself, the realization that she was not entirely powerless, that help could arrive when least expected. The gunmen, still in their car, exchanged uncertain glances. The man's eyes didn't waver, his stance unwavering. It was clear that he was not someone to be trifled with. Slowly, the vehicle began to back up, and then, as if acknowledging defeat, it turned and sped away down the street. The girl exhaled a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. and her knees felt weak as the tension drained from her body. The man turned to her then, his expression softening. He knelt slightly to be at her level, offering a reassuring smile. The girl, still trembling, took a step toward him, feeling the weight of the fear she had carried start to lift. She realized that what had felt like an insurmountable threat had been interrupted by someone who saw danger and acted without hesitation. The stranger had not only blocked the threat, but had done so with a presence that calmed her as much as it protected her. He asked her calmly if she was all right, and after the immediate danger had passed, the girl still felt the tension in her muscles, her heart beating in rapid, uneven bursts. She clutched her backpack tightly as though holding on to it could make her feel more grounded. The streets were quiet again, but every sound seemed amplified. The rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant barking of a dog. Even her own breathing seemed louder than usual. The presence of the man who had stepped in still lingered in her mind, a mixture of reassurance and awe. He had appeared like a guardian, someone who seemed to anticipate danger before it fully arrived. The girl noticed that the man had not relaxed his stance. His eyes scanned the surroundings constantly, alert and focused. There was no arrogance in his movements, only a calm determination that contrasted sharply with the fear she had felt moments ago. She tried to keep pace as he led her away from the alley, her steps quick but careful. She couldn't help but steal glances at him, wondering who he was and why he had been in the right place at the right time. There was something about the way he carried himself that made it clear he had experience dealing with dangerous situations. As they moved through the streets, the girl's mind raced. She thought about the car that had followed her and the two men inside it. Who were they? Why had they singled her out? The question swirled in her head, but she knew that dwelling on them wouldn't help her now. She had to focus on the present, on staying safe. The man seemed to sense her thoughts. He glanced at her and nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the flood of questions that were surely running through her mind. His silent communication was comforting, reminding her that she didn't have to carry this fear alone. They turned a corner and moved toward a busier street, one where more people were starting to appear. The sounds of everyday life, the chatter of neighbors, the hum of traffic, the laughter of children, were a stark contrast to the tense silence of the alley. It was almost disorienting for the girl, the sudden shift from fear to normalcy. She realized that danger could be hidden anywhere, and that safety often felt fragile and fleeting. Yet she also felt a growing sense of trust in the man who had come to her aid. His presence was a reminder that courage and vigilance could make a real difference. As they walked, the girl noticed that he was speaking quietly but firmly, giving her small instructions and advice. He told her to stay close, to be aware of her surroundings, and to move calmly but quickly. His voice was steady, carrying an authority that didn't feel overbearing but reassuring. She listened intently, absorbing every word, realizing that these instructions were not just about immediate safety, but about learning how to handle fear and uncertainty. She felt a strange mixture of relief and empowerment. Even in her vulnerability, she could take lessons from the courage displayed before her. The girl's thoughts drifted to her family. She imagined the panic they would feel if they knew what had happened. She'd always been careful, but today, circumstances had been beyond her control. She felt a renewed determination to reach home safely and to make sure that no harm came to her again. The man beside her seemed to understand this unspoken resolve. His eyes occasionally met hers, reassuring her that she was not alone in this moment, that someone was there to guide her through the danger. As they continued, the SUV that had brought him earlier was parked nearby, and he glanced at it briefly as if checking for potential threats. The girl realized that he was not just physically imposing, but also highly alert and strategic. He was aware of his environment, anticipating movements and ready to act if necessary. This level of awareness was both intimidating and comforting. It made her feel safe, yet reminded her that the world could be unpredictable and that vigilance was essential. The girl started to notice the small details around her, the patterns of shadows on the pavement, the way the wind carried sounds from a distance, the expressions of people passing by. Each detail seemed more vivid than usual, sharpened by the recent fear she had experienced. She realized that being alert didn't just mean watching for immediate threats. It meant noticing the world in a deeper, more connected way. The man walking beside her seemed to embody this principle, his senses attuned to everything happening around them, ready to intervene if needed. Suddenly, a noise from a nearby alley made the girl jump. Her body tensed and she instinctively stepped closer to the man. He immediately turned, scanning the area with focused attention. The noise was nothing, a cat knocking over a trash can, but the girl felt a mix of relief and lingering tension. The man didn't scold her for being cautious. Instead, he nodded, reinforcing that her instincts were valuable. It was a subtle but powerful lesson. Fear was natural, but acting thoughtfully in the face of it could keep her safe. As they approached a more populated area, the man began to slow down slightly, giving her time to catch her breath. He spoke about the importance of staying calm, even when fear threatened to overwhelm, and how making clear decisions under pressure could make the difference between danger and safety. The girl listened carefully, realizing that these weren't just practical instructions, they were life lessons. The experience, terrifying as it had been, was teaching her resilience, courage, and the value of trusting others while staying alert. The girl couldn't help but notice the reactions of people around them. Some paused, curious about the unusual pairing of a large, confident man and a small, frightened girl. Others continued on their way, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. The man remained focused on her, ensuring that she felt secure, aware that not everyone would notice the situation but determined that she would emerge from it unscathed. His commitment was quiet but unwavering, a testament to his character and his dedication to helping those in need. As they reached a small park that served, the girl could still feel her heart racing as she walked with the man beside her. Every sound seemed sharper than usual, the distant hum of cars, the rustle of leaves in the wind, even the footsteps of people nearby. She realized that she was still very much alert, her body reacting to the memory of the danger she had just escaped. The man beside her moved with calm purpose, his eyes scanning every street, every corner, every alley they passed. He was vigilant, not just for her, but for any unexpected threat that might appear, and his steady presence gave her a strange comfort. As they continued, the girl noticed that he kept a careful distance but never let her out of his sight. She began to trust his judgment, understanding that his experience made him aware of details she could easily miss. Every car, every shadow, every passerby was taken in with quiet attention. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before. While she had been focused on fear, he was focused on strategy, ensuring that they moved safely through the city. She started to feel less like a helpless child, and more like someone learning how to navigate danger under guidance. Suddenly, the noise of a screeching tire caught her attention. She instinctively moved closer to the man, her body tensing. He immediately reacted, positioning himself slightly in front of her, his gaze following the source of the sound. A car had stopped abruptly a few streets ahead, and two men were stepping out, looking around as if searching for something. The girl froze, recognizing the same sense of menace she had felt earlier. Her mind raced, trying to think of options. She didn't have many, but the man beside her did. He didn't panic. His body was a shield, his presence a signal that the girl was not alone, that the threat would be dealt with. The girl noticed the way he moved, quick yet measured. He spoke calmly, instructing her to stay close and not make sudden movements. The words were few, but they carried authority. She obeyed, stepping in sync with his movements, feeling the warmth of safety in contrast to the cold fear that had gripped her moments before. The men ahead were unaware that someone had already intercepted their path, someone who would not allow them to continue without consequences. As they approached, the girl could feel the tension building. She clutched her backpack, but the man's presence reminded her that she didn't have to face this alone. He had trained instincts and his confidence was contagious. The gunmen were armed, but he remained calm, assessing the situation, ready to act if needed. He positioned himself strategically, ensuring that the girl stayed behind him, shielded from potential harm. Every movement was deliberate, calculated to prevent any chance of escalation. The gunmen paused, noticing the imposing figure standing in their way. Their confidence seemed to falter, and they exchanged uncertain glances. The girl could feel the fear emanating from them. It was a strange reversal of roles. Moments ago, she had been paralyzed by fear, and now the very people who had threatened her were hesitant, unsure how to proceed. The man didn't say much, his eyes locked on them, his stance firm. The girl realized that his mere presence communicated strength and authority. She felt a surge of gratitude and awe. One of the men made a small step forward, but the man beside her didn't flinch. He shifted slightly, blocking the path, and spoke in a low, commanding voice. The words were calm but carried an unmistakable weight. The gunman froze, realizing that this was not an ordinary confrontation. The girl watched, her fear mixing with fascination. She had never imagined seeing someone so composed in the face of danger. Every movement, every glance, every word was calculated to ensure her safety and to deter the threat. After a tense moment, the gunmen backed away, clearly intimidated by the man's presence. They retreated to their vehicle, throwing cautious looks over their shoulders. The girl exhaled a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The immediate danger had passed, but the adrenaline was still coursing through her veins. She looked at the man beside her, wanting to express her gratitude but finding words inadequate. He nodded at her, a small gesture that acknowledged both the danger they had just avoided and her bravery in staying calm. The girl felt a mix of emotions: relief, awe, lingering fear, and growing respect. She realized that courage wasn't just about facing danger head-on. It was also about strategy, calmness, and protecting those who couldn't defend themselves. She had witnessed that firsthand. Her own fear had been overwhelming, but it had been countered by someone who knew how to handle the situation with wisdom and strength. As they moved away from the scene, the girl noticed the subtle details she hadn't paid attention to before: the shadows on the street, the patterns of movement in the people passing by, the sounds of distant traffic. All of it seemed sharper, more vivid. She realized that danger had a way of heightening awareness, teaching lessons that ordinary days never could. The man beside her seemed to notice these details instinctively, and she felt lucky to have someone so capable guiding her through the situation. They continued walking, the streets slowly becoming busier. The presence of other people added a layer of safety, but the girl remained cautious. She realized that danger could reappear at any moment, and her awareness was her first line of defense. The man spoke occasionally, giving her advice. The girl continued walking through the familiar streets, her mind still processing everything that had happened. The adrenaline that had surged through her body was slowly fading, leaving her exhausted but relieved. She felt the weight of the day pressing down on her, but also a sense of accomplishment. She had survived a frightening ordeal, and she had been guided by someone who had shown extraordinary courage. Her steps were lighter now, not because the danger had completely vanished, but because she felt supported and understood what it meant to be protected in a moment of fear. As they moved, the man beside her remained vigilant, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. He was calm, steady, and deliberate, a stark contrast to the girl's earlier panic. She realized that his presence was not just about physical protection. It was about creating a sense of emotional safety. Knowing that someone capable was by her side made it possible for her to begin processing her fear and begin regaining confidence. She clutched her backpack more loosely, feeling the tension slowly leave her shoulders. The streets were beginning to fill with more people, neighbors returning from their errands and children playing in the distance. The ordinary sights and sounds of daily life were grounding, yet the girl remained alert. She had learned that safety could not be taken for granted. Her mind went over the earlier moments, the car, the men, the alley, and she understood how quickly circumstances could change. But she also understood that courage and quick thinking could make all the difference. The man walking beside her embodied that lesson, and she felt lucky to witness it firsthand. They passed a small convenience store, and the man gestured subtly for her to slow down. He was teaching her without words how to be aware of entrances and exits, how to notice potential risks in everyday settings. She observed carefully, noting the details he seemed to notice effortlessly: the way a door opened, the position of people inside, the movements of passers-by. It was a lesson in vigilance, one she realized she would carry with her from this day forward. Her fear was still present, but now it was accompanied by awareness and understanding. The girl's thoughts wandered to her family. She imagined their relief when she finally returned home safely. The thought of seeing her parents again, of telling them she was unharmed, filled her with comfort. She wanted to hurry, yet the man reminded her with a calm gesture to keep moving steadily, not recklessly. She nodded, understanding that caution was part of survival. Each step was deliberate, guided by the awareness and composure he modeled. She had never felt this level of protection before, and it was a profound experience. As they walked through a quieter street, the girl noticed the subtle changes in her perception. Her senses felt sharper, attuned to the sounds and movements around her. She could hear the distant barking of a dog, the hum of a passing car, and even the faint rustle of leaves in a breeze. Every sound was a piece of information, and she realized how much she had learned about paying attention to her environment. The man beside her seemed to move in harmony with these observations, his awareness extending beyond immediate threats to include everything around them. It was a lesson in mindfulness and attentiveness. Suddenly, a commotion from a nearby street caught her attention. A group of teenagers was arguing loudly, their voices rising in anger. Her body tensed, and she instinctively moved closer to the man. He calmly assessed the situation, noting their positions and possible intentions. There was no panic in him, only a measured understanding of how to navigate potential conflicts. The girl realized that his training, his experience, and his instincts allowed him to handle such moments without fear, and she found herself drawing strength from his composure. The argument resolved quickly, the teenagers dispersing and the immediate tension passed. She exhaled quietly, feeling grateful for his guidance. The man spoke softly now, giving her advice on how to respond in situations where tension or conflict might arise. He emphasized the importance of staying calm, observing carefully and making thoughtful decisions. She listened intently, knowing that these lessons were invaluable. The experiences of the day had been intense, but they were also educational. She realized that fear could be managed, that courage could be learned, and that support could arrive when needed. These were truths she would remember long after this day ended. As they neared a busier intersection, the girl saw familiar faces, neighbors, friends, and people from her community. Seeing them brought a sense of normalcy, a return to the world she had known before the frightening encounter. Yet she remained cautious, aware that her perception had changed. The girl finally reached the last block before her home, her steps slower now as the tension of the day began to catch up with her. She could feel the lingering effects of fear, the adrenaline still pumping faintly in her veins, but it was mixed with an overwhelming sense of relief. She had survived what felt like an impossible situation, and she knew that she owed her safety to the man who had stepped in at exactly the right moment. His presence had been unwavering, calm, and decisive, and she realized that she had learned far more than just how to avoid immediate danger. She had learned about courage, awareness, and the power of acting with both compassion and strength. As she walked, her mind replayed the events from the beginning, the car following her, the moment of panic, the alley where she had hidden, and the sudden arrival of someone who seemed almost larger than life. Every detail was vivid in her memory, etched with a clarity that came from both fear and awe. She could remember the way his eyes had scanned the street, the way he had positioned himself between her and the threat, and the calm yet commanding tone of his voice. Those memories would stay with her, a reminder that even in the most frightening situations, bravery and decisive action could create a path to safety. When she turned the corner leading to her home, she noticed the familiar sights, the small garden outside her neighbor's house, the mailbox she had passed countless times, and the soft hum of the city in the distance. It all seemed comforting now, yet she knew that just moments ago she had been in serious danger. She realized how quickly life could shift from calm to terrifying, and how important it was to remain vigilant. The man who had protected her had shown her not just how to respond to danger, but how to stay alert and aware in everyday life. It was a lesson that went beyond this day, something she would carry with her always. The girl's thoughts turned to her family. She imagined her parents pacing anxiously inside, worried about where she might be. The thought made her quicken her pace slightly, eager to reassure them that she was safe. As she neared her front door, she took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. The fear that had once seemed overwhelming had now transformed into something more manageable, a sense of awareness, preparedness, and cautious confidence. She realized that surviving this day wasn't just about escaping immediate danger. It was about learning how to navigate fear and uncertainty with clarity and composure. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, immediately feeling the warmth and familiarity of home. Her parents rushed to her, their faces filled with relief and concern. She tried to explain what had happened, but her voice caught in her throat. Instead, she simply held on to them, feeling safe and protected in their embrace. The weight of the day began to lift, replaced by gratitude and a sense of profound relief. She knew she had been incredibly lucky, and she silently thanked the man who had saved her without even knowing her. As her parents settled her down and asked her questions about what had happened, she realized that the lesson extended beyond fear and safety. It was about the impact of compassion and courage in action. The man who had stepped in could have walked past, ignoring the situation, but he hadn't. He had chosen to act, to protect someone who could not defend herself, and in doing so, he had shown her the importance of stepping up when it mattered most. The girl felt a renewed sense of responsibility, not just to herself but to others. She wanted to be someone who could help, someone who could stand up for others in moments of need. In the days following the incident, the girl reflected on the experience frequently. She thought about how her perception of danger had changed, how her awareness had heightened, and how she had learned to trust both her instincts and the guidance of someone more experienced. She understood that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about facing fear with composure and making thoughtful decisions under pressure. She also realized the importance of having people in the world who would act decisively to protect others, and the ripple effect that kind of bravery could have. The girl shared her experience with a few trusted friends, focusing on the lessons she had learned rather than the fear itself. She talked about staying aware, being cautious, and trusting one's instincts. She also emphasized the incredible impact of the man who had intervened, explaining how his calm, decisive action had changed the course of the day. Her friends listened intently, absorbing the story not just as an exciting tale but as a lesson in courage and vigilance. The girl felt a sense of pride and empowerment as she shared her insights, realizing that even in frightening circumstances, valuable lessons could be learned. She also noticed a change within herself. The fear that had once seemed paralyzing was now tempered by experience and knowledge. She felt more confident walking alone, more aware of her surroundings, and more prepared to respond if danger appeared again. The man's actions had taught her that courage could be measured not just in dramatic confrontations, but in calm, deliberate responses that protected others and prevented harm. She began to understand that bravery could be quiet, thoughtful, and effective, and that it could inspire others to act with integrity and care. The girl also reflected on the importance of gratitude. She felt an immense appreciation for the person who had protected her, and for the broader community that supported safety and vigilance. She realized that expressing gratitude wasn't just about saying thank you. It was about recognizing the impact of others' actions and carrying those lessons forward. She wanted to honor the courage and compassion she had witnessed by embodying those qualities herself, in small ways every day. As time passed, the girl grew more confident in her ability to navigate her environment. She walked to school and other familiar places with a newfound sense of awareness, noticing details she had once overlooked. She practiced staying calm in tense situations, remembering the lessons she had learned about composure, strategy, and vigilance. The experience had left a lasting mark on her character, shaping her understanding of courage, empathy, and personal responsibility. The memory of the man who had intervened remained vivid. She often thought about how he had appeared at the perfect moment, how he had protected her with calm authority, and how he had taught her lessons without words. His actions had transformed what could have been a terrifying experience into an opportunity for growth, learning, and empowerment. She carried that memory as a source of inspiration, reminding herself that courage and kindness could coexist, and that one person's actions could profoundly impact another's life. Over time, the girl's confidence grew, not just in her ability to stay safe, but in her ability to act with integrity and thoughtfulness. She understood that life could be unpredictable, and that fear was a natural part of human experience. Yet she also understood that with awareness, preparation, and courage, fear could be managed and even transformed into a source of learning. The lessons show in many forms, and that help often arrived when it was needed most. As she approached her doorstep, the girl reflected on the events of the day, the fear, the danger, the lessons, and the heroism she had witnessed. She understood that these experiences had changed her, shaping her perception of courage, safety, and resilience. She had faced fear, been guided through it, and emerged stronger and wiser. The memory of the man who had protected her would stay with her, a reminder that bravery and compassion could turn moments of danger into lessons of hope, courage, and empowerment, on how to stay calm, how to move deliberately, and how to recognize potential threats without panicking. His guidance was subtle but powerful, She felt herself learning, absorbing lessons that would stay with her long after the immediate threat had passed. Her thoughts turned to her family and how they would react if they knew what had happened. She imagined the worry and fear in their eyes, and it strengthened her resolve to reach home safely. She knew she had been fortunate. That help had come when she needed it most, and she wanted to honor that by staying vigilant. The man's quiet presence reinforced this lesson, reminding her that courage and vigilance often went hand in hand. As they reached a small plaza near her home, the girl began to feel a sense of cautious relief. The streets were filled with familiar faces, the sounds of everyday life returning to normal. Yet she remained aware of her surroundings, knowing that safety was never guaranteed. The man continued to guide her, his attention unwavering. She felt a strange combination of exhaustion and empowerment. The fear that had dominated her moments ago was slowly giving way to a sense of confidence and understanding. The girl realized that she had learned something important that day. She had experienced fear, faced it indirectly, and survived. She had seen courage in action and had learned how to recognize it and trust it. The lessons were not theoretical. They were real, immediate, and unforgettable. She knew that these experiences would shape her approach to fear and danger in the future. As they approached the street that led directly to her home, the girl felt a final wave of relief. The man spoke one last time, reminding her to stay aware and to keep calm even when things seemed normal. She nodded, absorbing every word. His presence had been a shield, a guide, and a teacher all at once. She felt gratitude beyond words, realizing that this encounter had not only kept her safe but had also shown her a model of courage, responsibility, and compassion. Finally, they reached a point where she could safely continue on her own. She turned to him, wanting to express her thanks, but the words felt small compared to what she felt. Instead, she offered a nod and a quiet thank you. He responded with a reassuring gesture, acknowledging her gratitude and the strength she had shown. She watched him walk away, his figure gradually blending into the crowd, and felt a mixture of awe and relief. She knew she had experienced something extraordinary, a moment where fear had been met with courage, and where her life had been protected by someone willing to step in when it mattered most. The girl continued toward her home, each step lighter than the last. She reflected on the lessons of the day, the importance of awareness, the power of calmness under pressure, the impact of courage and protection. She felt stronger, wiser, and more confident. The memory of the man who had stood beside her would stay with her forever, a reminder that even in moments of fear, bravery and kindness could appear, guiding someone to safety and teaching lessons that last a lifetime. As a shortcut toward her home, the girl began to feel a sense of cautious optimism. The immediate threat seemed to be behind them, and the streets were slowly filling with familiar faces. She felt her body relax slightly, the tension in her shoulders easing. The man stayed vigilant, keeping a protective presence as they navigated the path. She realized that courage didn't always come from dramatic gestures or loud declarations. Sometimes it came from steady, quiet support, the kind that allowed someone to regain their strength and confidence. Walking through the park, the girl's mind wandered to the events that had led up to this moment. She reflected on how quickly life could change and how fragile safety could feel. The experience had been terrifying, yet it had also revealed the presence of goodness and bravery in the world. The man beside her had shown her that even when situations seemed hopeless, there were people willing to step in and make a difference. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, mixed with a newfound awareness of her own ability to remain composed under pressure. By the time they reached the edge of the park, where the streets were busier and more familiar, the girl felt a shift within herself. The fear that had dominated her mind earlier was now balanced by a sense of empowerment. She realized that she had survived a frightening ordeal, that she had learned to trust her instincts, and that she had been supported by someone who exemplified courage and compassion. The lessons of the day were still fresh, and she knew they would stay with her for a long time. The man finally spoke again, giving her one last piece of advice as they approached the street that led to her home. He reminded her to always stay aware, to keep calm, and to never underestimate her own intuition. The girl nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and respect. She had learned so much in such a short time, lessons that went beyond mere survival. She understood that courage could be both active and passive, that being brave didn't mean acting recklessly, and that help often arrived when least expected. As they reached a corner where the girl could safely continue on her own, she paused and looked at the man. She wanted to say more, to express the depth of her gratitude, but words seemed inadequate. Instead, she offered a simple nod and a quiet thank you. He acknowledged it with a small smile and a reassuring gesture, and then he began to walk away, disappearing into the streets with the same quiet confidence that had defined his presence throughout the ordeal. The girl watched him go, feeling a mixture of admiration, relief, and a renewed sense of strength. She turned toward her home, her steps lighter than before. She knew that she had faced a moment of true fear, yet had emerged stronger and wiser. The experience had shown her the importance of vigilance, the value of courage, and the impact that one person's bravery could have on another's life. As she walked, she carried with her the knowledge that help could appear unexpectedly and that, even in the face of fear, there was always a path toward safety and hope. Awed, her voice caught somewhere between relief and disbelief. She couldn't find the words to thank him properly, but she knew that her life had been spared because of his quick thinking and bravery. As they walked toward the end of the alley together, the girl began to feel a sense of empowerment growing within her. She had faced fear and someone had stood with her against it. The lesson was clear. Courage could take many forms, and sometimes it arrived when you least expected it. As they reached a safer street, she glanced back at the alley, her heart still racing. The car was gone and the threat had vanished, but the memory of it lingered. She realized that the world could be unpredictable and danger could appear anywhere. Yet she also understood that help could come from unexpected places. She had been lucky, incredibly lucky, and she carried that awareness with her as they continued toward a place of safety. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if the weight of fear had been replaced by a newfound sense of trust in the kindness and bravery of others. The man, still keeping a careful watch around them, finally spoke again, telling her to stay close and to not rush into the streets alone. His voice was firm but gentle, a balance of authority and care. The girl nodded, absorbing every word. She felt gratitude swelling within her, not just for the immediate protection, but for the example of courage and compassion she had witnessed. It was a lesson she would carry with her for a long time. By the time they reached the next street, where more people were starting to appear, the girl's shaking had subsided slightly. She realized she was safe, at least for now, and the terror that had gripped her was beginning to fade. She looked up at the man, her eyes filled with quiet awe, and whispered a simple thank you. It was all she could manage, but it carried the weight of her experience, the relief, and the gratitude she felt. He nodded, acknowledging her words, but said nothing more. His presence alone had spoken volumes. The girl continued to walk with him until she reached a place where she felt secure enough to continue on her own. As she waved goodbye, she felt a mixture of emotions, relief, gratitude, and a newfound awareness of the strength and courage that could exist in the world. She knew that she would never forget this day, the fear she had faced, and the man who had stepped in at the exact moment she needed him most. It was a memory that would shape her understanding of courage, trust, and the unexpected ways help could arrive when life felt most dangerous.